Okay, so lesson 15 is velocity. After a brief review of how the counter pattern is used to move sprites, the class is introduced to the properties that set velocity and rotation speed directly. As they use these new properties in different ways, they build up the skills they need to create a basic side-scroller game. So remember, the counter pattern is something like sprite.x equals sprite.x plus 1 or minus 1. Let's move on. Okay, we're going to watch this video as a class. Velocity. Okay, the velocity blocks, velocity x and velocity y, tell sprites how fast to move in a particular direction, just as the counter pattern did before. By hiding the counter pattern code inside a block, you can build even more complex programs. So let's see the examples they have here. Okay, so they're using velocity here. Do I see it? I see this. Yep, a lot of velocity over here. Okay, so basically what's going on is they dumbed down this into this, right? The code that uses the counter pattern is on the left, and the code that uses velocity blocks is on the right. So this is a little more simpler, okay, but it makes the same thing that we've seen before. Okay, let's get started with the exercises. Velocity X. One way to move sprites in GameLab is with the counter pattern. For example, sprite1.x equals sprite1.x plus 1 moves a sprite by 1 pixel each frame of the draw loop. This pattern is so common that sprites have a velocity X property that does this for you. Okay, so drag a sprite.velocity X block directly below where your sprite is created. So I think they're referring to this area. Yes, they are. Okay, add your block here, sprite.velocity X. And we gotta write the name of your sprite in the block, so fish. Assign the velocity X property a value of 1. Run the code, see what happens. Okay, so remember this is kind of like sprite.x equals sprite.x plus 1. Rerun the code giving the velocity X property a different value. Okay, let's give it 20. And guys, floating fast. Alright, move on. Moving down. Here is a feather sprite that should be floating down the screen. If velocity X makes a sprite move to the right, can you find the block that will make the feather move down? Think about this for a second, folks. Do this. Find the block that will make the feather sprite go down the screen and use it outside the draw loop. Okay, there. By outside the draw loop, they're saying do not put it in here. Okay, so yes, we're going to put it here. And it is velocity y. Hopefully you figured that out. Feather, velocity y. I do think that 1 will make it go down. Positive 1. Alright, cool. Awesome. Rotation speed. You've already learned how to make your sprite spin by using the rotation block. For example, when you wanted your sprite to rotate by 2 degrees each time it was drawn, you put sprite.rotation equals sprite.rotation plus 2 inside the draw loop. Now you can use the rotation speed to make your sprites rotate by a certain amount each time they are drawn. If you want your sun to rotate by 2 degrees each time it's drawn, you can use sun.rotation speed equals 2 before the draw loop after you create your sprite. So again, they're saying right about here, okay? Not inside the draw loop. Alright, do this. Make the sun rotate by 3 degrees each time using the rotation speed block. Again, you can click show me where, but it's pointing to the same area. Okay, sprite.rotation speed. Gotta set it to sun, and they said 3 degrees. So let's see what happens. Okay, cool. And if we make this 0, nothing happens. Okay, so change it back to 3. Cool. Controlling speed. You used rotation speed outside the draw loop to make your sprite rotate when your program started. You can also use rotation speed inside the draw loop to change the speed of the sprite during the game. For example, a sprite can start rotating when the user presses the spacebar, and it will keep rotating until it's told to stop. Do this. Look at the if statement inside the draw loop that checks whether the spacebar has been pressed. Okay, so there's the if statement right here. Use the rotation speed block to make the color wheel start spinning when the user presses the spacebar. Okay, that's all we need to do. So, what's the name of the sprite? Wheel. Okay, so wheel dot rotation speed. Let's make it 3, just like in the other level, and press the space bar to make it spin. Cool, it worked. But notice how it's not done spinning. I wonder if we'll fix that in the next few levels. Controlling speed. Your code before the draw loop sets up the beginning of your game. Your code inside the draw loop controls how the game will change while it's being played. In this game, the helicopter bot starts off at the bottom of the screen, but when the space key is pressed, it flies up. Not yet. I just pressed my space bar and nothing happened. Do this. Use an if statement inside the draw loop to check when the space bar is pressed. Okay, that's just like the last level we just saw. So we're going to put that right there. If key down, space. Okay, cool. Use the velocity Y block to make the sprite fly up when the user presses the space bar. Okay. So I'm going to drag the velocity Y block, sprite.velocity Y, to make the sprite fly up. So the sprite is called fly bot when the user presses the space bar. Okay, I think going up is a negative. And I think that's all we got to do for this level. Let's see. Yep, okay, it's working. Changing velocity with position. One advantage to using the velocity blocks inside conditionals are if blocks, is that your sprite keeps moving even after the condition stops being true. For example, you only had to press a key once to launch your flybot, and it kept flying. The code below uses if statements to make a fish sprite move in different directions. So you see, this fish, when it hits the left side, it turns around, goes to the right. When it hits the right side, turns around, goes to the left. Do this. Look at if statements that check the sprite's position and set its velocity. Okay. Alright, so the if statements, so far I see 2. Alright, 2 if statements. Cool. Let's take a look at them. Alright, so this first if statement, if fish.x is less than 0, okay, so if it's less than 0, if it hits this left wall, then it sets the velocity to 2, which makes it go right. So that means when it gets over here, it sets the velocity to 2. And it changes the set animation to the fish facing right. I would imagine that's what fish R stands for. Now this if statement does the opposite. When fish.x is greater than 400, which is over here, it sets the animation to a left-facing fish and makes the velocity -2, making it go left. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well done, well done. That's all we need to do for level 9, puzzle 9, whatever you want to call it. Puzzle 10, multiple controls. As you saw in the last level, you can change the sprite's velocity with multiple if statements. In this program, the fish has 3 different types of movement, each of which should be controlled by its own if statement. Do this. Look at the 3 if statements inside the draw loop. Okay. Okay, if fish reaches left edge, fish stops. That's what we saw here. Excuse me. If user presses right arrow, fish swims right. If fish reaches right edge, fish swims left. Okay. Alright, so I looked at the 3 if statements. Use a sprite.velocity x block inside each if statement to make the 3 following movements. If the user presses the right arrow key, move the fish to the right. Okay, so I think, alright, yeah, we want a sprite.velocity, and in the last level they had 2, so we'll make it 2. The sprite's name is fish. I guess we want to just keep doing, because it says in all 3 of the if statements. Okay, let's read the second one. If the fish gets to the right hand side of the screen, move the fish to the left. Okay, that will be this. Move the fish to the left. Okay. Yeah, that is this if statement because the right hand side of the screen is about 400x. If you look at the x coordinate. Okay, so sprite velocity x, and I believe that will be a negative number. So we'll do -2. And then the third one, if the fish gets to the left-hand side of the screen, stop the fish. Okay, so that is the first if statement. And if we want to stop the fish, then we want the velocity to be 0. Alright, so I press the right arrow once, and that's all I need to do. Now the code should run by itself. I just pressed the right arrow on my keyboard, and now the fish should stop. Cool, it stopped. Jumping. You now have all the blocks you need to make your sprite jump. The sprite should jump if it's on the ground and the user presses the up key. Then should start moving back down when it reaches the top of its jump. Okay, do this. Find the if statement that checks whether the sprite is on the ground and look at the if statement inside of it that checks whether the user has pressed the up arrow key. Okay, alright, this is the if statement, and there's an if statement inside the if statement. Okay, if the user presses the up arrow, make the frog move up, else make the frog stop moving. Okay, make the frog jump up when the user presses the arrow key. Okay, so that's velocity y, and it's going to be a negative velocity y. So frog, and we'll make it -3. Else make the frog stop moving. Okay, frog.velocity y equals 0. If we want it to stop moving, that is 0. So let's see if that works so far. Okay, yeah, but it should keep going. Yeah, it just keeps going. We don't want that. If you're making a game and that happens, that's an issue. So we did the first thing. Make the frog stop moving otherwise. We did that. Add code that does the following. Show me where. Okay, down here. Checks whether the frog sprite has reached its highest point. If so, make this frog sprite go back down. Okay, so what do we want the highest point to be? Probably the y value up here. So what is that? Y equals 20, we'll say. So we're going to need an if statement. If the frog gets high enough, if frog.y is less than 20, then send it back down. Okay?